On a quiet summer evening in 2014, a tragedy unfolded in Spring, Texas that would shock an entire nation. Ronald Lee Haskell's calculated act of violence against the Stay family left 6 innocent lives lost and one survivor who would go on to inspire millions. This is the story of heartbreak, resilience, and justice in the face of unimaginable loss.
On July 9, 2014, in the quiet suburban neighborhood of Spring, Texas, the Stay family was enjoying an ordinary summer evening. The household, which included Katie Stay, her husband Stephen, and their 5 children ranging from 4 to 15 years old, was filled with laughter and activity. However, their peaceful evening was interrupted when Ronald Lee Haskell, a 33-year-old man with a troubled history, arrived at their doorstep around 5 p.m. Disguised in a FedEx delivery uniform, Haskell claimed to have a package for Katie. Suspicious but polite, she opened the door slightly, allowing him to push his way inside. Armed and determined, Haskell tied up the family in the living room, demanding to know the whereabouts of Katie's sister, Melanie Lyon. Melanie had recently left her abusive marriage to Haskell, and she had sought refuge with her sister, Katie. Haskell's anger had been simmering for weeks, fueled by resentment over Melanie's departure and perceived betrayal. His presence in the Stay home was part of a calculated plan to punish anyone he believed had aided her. For nearly an hour, Haskell interrogated the family, growing increasingly agitated when they refused to reveal Melanie's location. Despite their terror, Katie and Stephen tried to calm him down, offering him anything to spare their children. Their efforts were futile. At approximately 6:30 p.m., Haskell began executing his chilling plan. He shot each family member at close range, one by one, sparing no one except the eldest daughter, Cassidy Stay, who miraculously survived by pretending to be dead. Haskell fled the scene, leaving a horrifying trail of devastation behind him. Cassidy, bleeding and in shock, managed to call 911 once Haskell left. Her bravery and quick thinking not only saved her life but also alerted authorities to the danger Haskell posed. She provided a detailed description of him and his vehicle, setting off an intense manhunt across Harris County. Law enforcement quickly identified Haskell as the suspect, thanks to Cassidy's testimony and surveillance footage from nearby cameras. His connection to Melanie and his volatile history of domestic violence were well documented, providing investigators with a clear motive. Police issued an alert to the public, warning that Haskell was armed and dangerous. Haskell was spotted hours later, driving erratically on a highway near a Walmart parking lot. A high-speed chase ensued, culminating in a standoff at around 10 p.m. For nearly 4 hours, Haskell held police at bay, threatening to harm himself as negotiators attempted to talk him down. Finally, in the early hours of July 10th, Haskell surrendered to authorities. He was arrested and charged with capital murder. The Spring community, still reeling from the news, began to grapple with the enormity of the tragedy. Ronald Lee Haskell's trial began in August 2019 at the Harris County Courthouse in Houston, Texas. The courtroom was filled with emotion as prosecutors meticulously laid out the evidence against him. The trial, lasting over 3 weeks, revealed the calculated nature of Haskell's actions and the depth of his anger toward his ex-wife and her family. Prosecutors described Haskell as a man consumed by rage and a desire for revenge. Witnesses testified about his abusive behavior toward Melanie during their marriage and his escalating threats after their divorce. His obsession with control was evident in the months leading up to the murders, as he carefully planned his attack on the Stay family. Cassidy Stay, the lone survivor, took the stand to recount the horrifying events of that evening. Her testimony, though heart-wrenching, was instrumental in painting a vivid picture of Haskell's brutality. She described how she pretended to be dead after being shot, later summoning the courage to call for help. The prosecution's case was bolstered by forensic evidence, including the firearm used in the murders and Haskell's fingerprints at the scene. Surveillance footage showed him purchasing the FedEx uniform as part of his premeditated plan. Cell phone records tracked his movements, placing him near the Stay home on the day of the attack. Haskell's defense team attempted to argue that he suffered from severe mental illness, claiming he was not in control of his actions during the crime. They called experts to testify about his history of depression and paranoia, suggesting that he had been driven by delusional thinking rather than malice. Despite these arguments, the jury found Haskell guilty on all counts. On September 26, 2019, he was sentenced to death, with the judge calling his actions unspeakable and beyond comprehension. The verdict brought a sense of justice to the grieving community, though the pain of the loss lingered. In the aftermath, Melanie Lyon, Haskell's ex-wife, spoke publicly about the importance of recognizing the warning signs of domestic violence. She emphasized the need for stronger support systems to help victims escape abusive relationships before tragedies occur. Cassidy Stay became a symbol of resilience, founding a charity in honor of her family called Stay Strong Forever. The organization supports victims of domestic violence and spreads awareness about the dangers of unchecked abuse. Her strength and courage inspired many, turning her personal tragedy into a force for change. The murders of the Stay family left a profound impact on Spring, Texas, highlighting the devastating consequences of domestic violence and the need for community vigilance. Haskell's calculated actions underscored the importance of addressing mental health and ensuring that individuals with a history of violence are monitored closely. Though justice was served, the legacy of the Stay family endures in the hearts of those who knew them. Their story serves as a tragic reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring strength of those who choose to rise above unimaginable loss.
This one is going to be tough. It's the Stay family. In Spring, Texas, summer of 2014.
Yeah.
A seemingly ordinary family gathering turns into this horrific act of violence. I think a lot of people listening probably already know the basics.
Right.
But today we're going beyond the headlines with this deep dive.
Absolutely. We've got court transcripts, articles detailing the events and the aftermath, and even some personal accounts.
Okay.
So we're going to try to piece together not just what happened, but why. Why Ronald Lee Haskell did what he did.
The chilling why.
Yeah, and how it impacted everyone involved.
So let's start with the key players.
Okay.
We've got Katie and Stephen Stay, parents of 5 children.
Yes.
And the perpetrator, Ronald Lee Haskell.
Estranged husband of Katie's sister, Melanie Lyon.
Melanie Lyon, okay.
And one detail from the sources that really jumps out at you right from the start is that Haskell showed up at the Stays' home disguised as a FedEx delivery driver.
Oh, that's chilling.
Yeah, talking about calculated.
Right. This was not a spur-of-the-moment act.
Absolutely not. This was a plan. He had a plan and he was going to see it through.
It just makes me think, can you imagine the horror of, opening your door to someone you think is just delivering a package, and then boom, that facade crumbles in such a horrifying way?
It's awful. And this FedEx disguise, it's actually a tactic we see sometimes in these cases, a way for the perpetrator to gain access and control.
So it's around 5:00 p.m. on July 9th when Haskell arrives at the Stay residence. It was just, regular evening. Kids are probably excited for summer. Maybe the family was starting to think about dinner.
Right.
And their whole world just gets shattered.
Yeah. And according to the reports, Katie, being cautious, opened the door just a crack. But that was all Haskell needed to force his way in.
Even in that moment of surprise, she's trying to protect her family.
Right.
I mean, it's just heartbreaking to think about what was going through their minds when they realized who it was at the door.
It's a horrible thought. The sources describe Haskell overpowering the family, tying them up, and he starts demanding to know where Melanie is.
So he wasn't there for the Stays.
No, they were pawns in his twisted game.
His primary target was Melanie.
Yeah.
And he was willing to do whatever it took to find her.
It seems that way.
The testimonies of the people who witnessed these events, you can just sense the desperation and the fear.
You really can. And what's amazing and heartbreaking is that even in this terrifying situation, Katie and Stephen, they try to reason with Haskell, offering him money, possessions, anything to spare their children.
I can't even imagine having the strength to remain calm and try to negotiate with someone so clearly unstable and dangerous.
I know. It's just a testament to their love for their kids.
But their pleas, tragically, fell on deaf ears. Around 6:30 p.m., Haskell starts shooting, methodically executing each family member.
Chilling.
Just the brutality of this act, it's hard to even comprehend. And, it's clear from the forensic evidence and the witness testimonies that this wasn't just a random act of violence. It was calculated. It was cold-blooded.
Yeah.
And the fact that he targeted the children
Yes.
adds another layer of cruelty to this case.
The level of violence, the meticulous nature of the killings, it really is disturbing. But it's important to acknowledge this darkness, to try to understand what could drive someone to this.
And then there's Cassidy Stay, the 15-year-old. She survives this nightmare,
Yeah, miraculous.
playing dead, even after being shot in the head.
Incredible courage and resilience. I mean, she's a teenager facing a life or death situation, and she's able to think clearly enough to play dead. That's astonishing. It speaks to the power of the human will to survive.
Her bravery didn't stop there. After Haskell fled the scene, she was wounded and in shock.
Right.
She managed to call 911.
That call was pivotal in the investigation.
Her call alerted the authorities. She provided a detailed description of Haskell, his vehicle, and this set off a massive manhunt.
It's incredible. In her most vulnerable moment, she's able to provide the information that leads to Haskell's capture.
I mean, her ability to remain calm and collected, just wow. Her quick thinking and bravery were just instrumental in bringing Haskell to justice.
They really were. And her 911 call, combined with surveillance footage, allowed the police to quickly identify Haskell as the suspect.
Okay.
They issued a public alert, warning everyone that he was armed and dangerous, and he had a history of domestic violence.
That last bit is crucial.
Yes, it is. It connects Haskell and Melanie, suggesting a motive for this horrific crime.
It adds another layer of urgency to this manhunt because the authorities realize that Melanie could also be in danger.
Exactly.
So the manhunt intensifies. Just a few hours later, Haskell is spotted driving erratically near a Walmart. A high-speed chase
Oh, wow.
ends in this tense standoff in the Walmart parking lot around 10:00 p.m. Can you imagine this scene? The police surrounding the car, negotiators trying to talk Haskell down, the community holding its breath, just waiting for the outcome.
Yeah. And during the standoff, Haskell reportedly threatened to harm himself.
Oh, wow.
So this introduces another level of complexity. Was this a genuine cry for help or just a tactic to manipulate the authorities? It's a question that likely played a role in the psychological evaluations that were done later.
So the standoff lasted for about 4 hours. Finally, in the early hours of July 10th, Haskell surrenders, arrested and charged with capital murder.
Wow. And with that arrest, the community breathes this collective sigh of relief. But the story is far from over. This wasn't just a crime. It was a tragedy that ripped a family apart, left behind unimaginable pain and loss.
And as the dust settled, The long road to justice was just beginning.
Yeah.
We'll dive into that legal battle and the emotional roller coaster of the trial in the next part of our deep dive.
I'm ready. So the community is grappling with this horrific tragedy.
Yeah.
And the wheels of justice are slowly turning.
Right.
5 years pass before Ronald Lee Haskell finally faces trial in August of 2019.
Wow. 5 years.
At the Harris County Courthouse in Houston, families on both sides present media scrutiny.
The weight of this moment.
It must have been incredibly heavy for everyone there.
Especially for Cassidy Stay.
Oh, absolutely. To face Haskell again, relive that terrifying night in front of a jury, the courtroom full of strangers, I can't imagine.
You know, reading through these trial transcripts, it's really where Cassidy's resilience shines through.
It does.
Her testimony, heartbreaking but powerful.
Yes.
She doesn't shy away from the details. She talks about the fear, the chaos, that moment where she made the decision to play dead.
Right.
Her words just paint this vivid picture of Haskell's brutality.
And that must have had a profound impact on the jury.
Oh, I'm sure. I read somewhere that during her testimony, the courtroom was so silent you could hear a pin drop.
Wow.
Everyone was captivated.
It must have been incredibly difficult for her to recount those events, but she did it with incredible composure and strength.
Yeah.
And her testimony was just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
Prosecution had spent those 5 years building this meticulous case. They present a mountain of evidence. DNA evidence, ballistics, fingerprints, surveillance footage of him purchasing the FedEx uniform. They even have cell phone records, placing him near the stay home.
So they were really trying to leave no room for doubt.
Exactly. And in addition to the physical evidence, they presented witness testimonies that paint a disturbing picture of Haskell's past.
Okay.
People who knew him, including Melanie, spoke about his abusive behavior, escalating threats, his growing obsession with control.
So they're trying to establish a pattern of behavior
Yes.
to show that this wasn't just a random act,
Precisely.
but that this was something that had been building for some time.
Yes, they wanted to show that Haskell had a clear intent to kill and that his actions were premeditated.
Okay.
The defense, however, opted for a different strategy,
What's that?
the insanity plea,
Hmm.
arguing that Haskell wasn't in control of his actions due to a severe mental illness.
That he couldn't distinguish right from wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But wouldn't all the evidence of premeditation make that a really difficult argument to win?
It was a gamble,
Yeah.
a high-stakes gamble on the part of the defense.
Because, we know he planned this attack for weeks. He even disguised himself.
You're right, it's a good point.
Huh.
They brought in expert witnesses to testify about Haskell's history of depression, paranoia, suggesting that he was in a state of psychosis when he committed the murders.
Psychosis?
Yeah, a mental state where a person loses touch with reality. Hallucinations, delusions.
So the defense was arguing that Haskell's actions, while horrific, were the product of a disturbed mind,
Yes.
not of a calculating criminal.
Exactly. It seems like they were trying to evoke some sympathy for Haskell, to
Right.
argue that he was a victim of his own mental illness.
That must have been a tough sell.
It was, especially given the brutality of the crime and the overwhelming evidence against him.
So the jury had a very difficult task.
They did, weighing the evidence, the testimonies, the legal arguments, the emotional weight of the case.
The nation was watching,
They were.
waiting for the verdict. So after weeks of testimony, deliberation, what was the outcome?
The jury ultimately rejected the insanity plea
Okay.
and found Ronald Lee Haskell guilty on all counts.
Wow.
On September 26, 2019, he was sentenced to death.
5 years after that horrific summer night, justice, at least in the eyes of the law, was served.
It was.
But can there ever truly be closure for the families?
That's a good question.
Can any legal outcome truly address the immense pain and loss?
It's a question with no easy answers. A guilty verdict might provide some sense of accountability.
Right.
But it can never erase the trauma, the grief, the empty space left behind.
Yeah.
For Melanie and Cassidy, the journey to healing was just beginning.
It's hard to even imagine the weight of their grief and, the long road to recovery.
For sure. Melanie and Cassidy lost so much. Their lives were irrevocably changed.
But, reading about their stories in the aftermath, it just really shows the resilience of the human spirit.
It really does. Melanie, having experienced the devastating effects of domestic violence firsthand, chose to channel her pain into this powerful force for change.
She became an outspoken advocate for domestic violence awareness.
Right.
Instead of, retreating into grief, she stepped into the public eye, sharing her story,
Wow.
urging others to recognize the warning signs.
Powerful.
She didn't just talk about it either.
No.
She became involved in organizations that support victims.
Okay.
She pushed for changes in legislation.
To protect those at risk.
It's just so inspiring,
Yeah,
transforming her personal tragedy into a mission to help others.
it really is.
I wonder, did she connect with other families who had suffered similar losses?
I think she did. There are accounts from other families who found comfort and strength in Melanie's advocacy. She became a beacon of hope, this testament to the power of turning pain into purpose.
And then there's Cassidy.
Right.
Despite enduring the unimaginable, she chose a path of resilience and hope too, founding the Stay Strong Forever charity.
It's remarkable, She faced the unimaginable, the trauma.
Yeah.
And yet she emerged with this determination to make a difference.
Stay Strong Forever, it's not just a name. It's a reflection of her spirit, her commitment to helping other victims of trauma.
Absolutely.
Both Melanie and Cassidy, in their own ways, chose to honor their loved ones
Yeah.
by working to prevent future tragedies.
Yeah.
Their actions speak volumes.
They do, about their strength, their compassion.
It's just a reminder that even in the face of loss, there's that potential for growth, for healing, for creating something positive out of the darkness.
It is.
This whole deep dive has been quite an emotional roller coaster.
For sure.
I mean, we've explored these really dark corners of human behavior, but we've also seen this incredible courage, resilience, this power of love.
It's true.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what's the most important message you think listeners should take away from all of this?
It's tough. But I'd say the importance of awareness.
Okay.
We need to be aware of the signs of domestic violence, both the subtle and the overt ones. Educate ourselves about mental health issues. Understand that seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness. And create a culture of support and vigilance in our communities.
I was thinking about that. This wasn't just a random act of violence.
Right.
It was a culmination of so many factors. And you think, what if someone had noticed those warning signs with Haskell?
Yeah.
What if he had gotten the help he needed?
It's impossible to know for sure, but it highlights the importance of early intervention, creating a safety net.
We can't be bystanders.
No, we need to be proactive, to speak up, to offer support.
You've given us a lot to think about today.
I hope so.
This case, the Stay family tragedy, it's a reminder of the fragility of life,
Yeah.
the consequences of violence. But it's also a testament to the human spirit,
Yeah.
the capacity for resilience, the importance of turning pain into purpose. And with that, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. To all our listeners out there, stay curious, stay engaged, and as Cassidy says, stay strong.